Insurance in this day and age is not a one size fits all. We, as master builders, we look at your unique scenarios. We look at your business, what's important to you, how best we can mitigate your risks as best as possible, well, how we can highlight certain exclusions and make sure you are adequately, or not adequately covered, more than adequately covered. And having honest conversations is, I think, what's really vital is talk to your broker. What are your concerns? What keeps you up at night? What are the things that you go, have I thought of this and have I thought of that? Really good, meaty questions.
Thinking about building or renovating? Or maybe you are already knee-deep in a project now. Are you feeling unsure of which steps to take and if you are making the right calls? You're not alone. Welcome to Builders Beyond Borders, the podcast where experienced Aussie builders share real stories, insider tips, and practical advice so you can build with confidence, avoid costly mistakes, and actually enjoy the journey. Let's dive in.
Okay, so welcome back to our podcast, Builders Beyond Borders. And today we have me, Louise, your host from Perway Construction Services here in WA. We also have the wonderful Hugh from New Realm Homes down in Victoria. And today we have a lovely guest speaker, and we're so grateful for her to be here. We've got Rashida Ditburner. I hope I've said that correctly, Rashida. WA's State Manager for Master Builders Insurance Brokers. So welcome, Rashida, to our podcast for today. So just to get started, today's episode is just a little bit different because it's actually come from a real situation that we as Perway faced on our renovation project a few weeks ago. So like most builders, we always advise our clients to notify their home and contents insurer about existing structure insurance before construction starts. So we were going to start a renovation project. We, notified the client, make sure that you inform your insurer about the construction works, and that you need to see if you can get insurance for that existing structure, and because new works are happening. The builder, so we as Perway, we have our contract works insurance in place, and then the existing structure needed to be insured. So on this particular project, the homeowners contacted their insurer to let them know that the works were about to begin. The project value was more than $500,000, and it was about a 6-month construction period. So in this case, their insurer actually declined to cover them and their home during the building works. So suddenly we had this situation where the existing structure of the home would be uninsured during construction unless another arrangement was put in place. So the problem was that if an event happened, so just say that we had 90% of the works completed in our scope of works, and then a fire happened or maybe a car drove through that property, then the builder was only insured to cover the works under the scope of works, but not the existing property structure. So we questioned with our broker at the time, could we extend our contract's work insurance to include the existing structure? And exploring that option, it was possible. And what it meant was the clients would have to pay that additional premium, which would be around $2,000, which was fine. However, the challenge was that, and it's something probably a lot of builders don't actually think about. So if a claim actually happened on that existing structure during the build, technically then the builder was the insured party under that policy extension. So then the claims history sits with the builder, which meant we questioned this, and it would mean that our potential claims, our insurance premiums then could increase for the next 3 to 5 years by somewhat between $30,000 to $50,000. So over the course of 5 years, our risk could have been an extra $250,000 for that particular project. So we we also understood that, obviously it wasn't our risk to take, but then it was really unfair to put that risk onto the homeowner. So one option we looked at was documenting an agreement with the homeowner that they would pay the premium, but then if a claim occurred, then they would indemnify us for any increased insurance premiums. But then the more we unpacked the situation was really complicated for both us and the homeowners. So we felt then the risk structure wasn't right for either party. And that's how I led to this conversation with Rashida. fortunately, the homeowners were able to obtain their insurance through a company called UE, and we subsequently found out that they could also get insurance through it's Go Amy, I think, AAMI, and they can assist in certain situations as well. Yeah, the whole experience was really complicated, and I was very grateful to Rashida to help guide me through some of this because, yeah, a lot of this insurance stuff pretty much went over my head. So Rashida was incredibly helpful in giving us guidance and helping us understand the risks around the existing structure insurance. So today I wanted to bring her onto the podcast to help unpack some of these issues that builders and homeowners face because insurance in construction is confusing and it's one of the, most important protections that homeowners and builders should have. So welcome Rashida. It was a big introduction there. But firstly, can you just tell us a little bit about your role with Master Builders and what you do? And then, we'll just unpack maybe the situation we just described.
Excellent. Thank you very, very much. And thank you for that amazing introduction. As Louise mentioned, my name is Rashida Ditburner. I am the WA State Manager for Master Builders Insurance Brokers. We specialize in construction insurance and work closely with builders and construction businesses to help them understand their risks, the risks that they face on a day-to-day basis, and obviously ensuring that they have the right insurance protections in place, for the works that they undertake. Before we jump in, I think it is very important to mention or quickly mention that the information that we discuss today is that of a general nature only, and it's really just intended for educational purposes. So everyone's circumstances are really different. So it's always a good idea for homeowners and builders to speak to their brokers or advisors to make sure that the insurance arrangements are appropriate depending on their unique situations. Now, I'll jump in. I'll say that construction in itself and this particular industry is quite unique and it has a lot of moving parts. So you've got multiple trades on site. You've got complex projects. There's constantly changing conditions. And while most projects generally run smoothly, things can occasionally go wrong. And this is where insurance plays an important role in helping both the builders and the homeowners manage those particular risks themselves. What we'll do is, if it's all right, I'll just jump into the general insurance considerations that a homeowner needs to consider before any construction works take place.
Yeah, no problem.
When a homeowner starts planning a new build or a renovation, insurance isn't the first thing that's on their mind. Most people would normally focus on the design or the budget and get obviously just before the project gets underway. Now, there are a few important insurance considerations that we need them to take into account. And one of the most important questions that is vital to ask at the beginning stages is who is responsible for insuring the existing property should there be one and during the construction phase. If it's a brand new home, things are fairly straightforward. So the builder would typically arrange the contract works insurance, which is what you mentioned earlier, which helps protect the project whilst it's being built. And that's quite straightforward and streamlined when it's a brand new project. When it becomes a little bit tricky is when there's an existing structure itself, where the homeowner and the builder need to come to some sort of understanding as to who's taking on that particular responsibility, right? From a claims perspective, I think what we see generally that happens is that if there's no agreement in place on the onset and there's disputes that arise if something has gone awry with the particular project itself and disputes come across, that's when things become tricky. So reviewing the contract initially at stage one, going who is responsible. So if it is on the context of the homeowner, to contact their existing home insurer and obviously notify them that there is a renovation that's going to be undertaken. Should the insurance and reviewing that policy documents to ensure that it's adequate and covers the work itself during that construction phase is vital. And then obviously for the builder, if that home owner's insurance then steps away and says we are not going to provide coverage, what does the builder need to provide their insurance broker so that their broker or intermediary can facilitate that the existing structure of the homeowner is then incorporated within the contract works policy itself. I think, again, just underlining the applicable costs, as you've mentioned earlier, Louise, within that particular agreement, I think that is pretty vital to make sure that is discussed on the onset prior
Mhm.
to any works being undertaken before, construction actually starts.
Yeah, it was definitely a lesson for us as well that I feel like that we left it we had definitely in this case left it too late in that very late in the process to inform that client. So it was a good lesson for us to go, let's bring this conversation in a lot earlier before contracts are signed, before anything. It's just to bring that awareness to both parties, just for them to even start making the inquiries with their insurance company that, just to find out what will they cover, and what else they need to know. So, it's everything's, all of the mistakes and lessons that we have, it's an opportunity to learn from for again. So, um,
100%. And if we look at the types of questions that the insurer would normally ask when it is the request from the builder to extend the cover to the homeowner's existing properties, those are fairly basic questions. So they want to know, what is the work that's going to be undertaken?
yeah.
What is the duration of that particular project? How long is it going to take? Most importantly, and one of the key fundamentals, or one of the questions which is absolutely important as well, which they really highlight in their questionnaire when it comes back to us, is part of the roof going to be removed? And if the answer is yes, for how long? They also would like to know, is the home going to be occupied during the renovation
Mhm,
period as well, which is a key consideration for the insurer to consider whether undertaking or accepting the risk. And the
mhm.
premiums are relatively tied into those particular responses that the builder then provides on behalf of the homeowner.
Yeah. No, that's really helpful. Thank you for that, Rashida. So, Rashida, one of the other big topics that affects homeowners in Western Australia, now I'm assuming it's the same for Hugh over there in Victoria, is the home indemnity insurance that there's only one insurance company that does that for worldwide, and that's worldwide, sorry, Australia wide, and that's QBE. So many homeowners hear about it when they sign a building contract and don't fully understand what it actually covers. So, are you able to explain to everybody, for our listeners, what home indemnity insurance is and what it's designed to protect homeowners against?
I'm just going to jump in for clarification. For Western Australia and South Australia, there is only one insurer in the market, being QBE.
Yep.
And what home indemnity insurance actually is about is the insurance that is taken out on behalf of the homeowner by the builder. It is to protect the homeowner should the builder die, disappear, or become insolvent. That's ultimately
Mm,
what it's for. And most importantly, if the works that the builder is going to be undertaking is worth $20,000 or more. And
yeah.
that is when it becomes an absolute must. Once the builder has got this particular home indemnity insurance in place, which allows the builder to undertake the work, the builder then is able to provide the homeowner with a certificate of eligibility proving to the homeowner that they have the respective insurance in place before they undertake the work. And that is a very important document to provide to that homeowner, which is specific to their project, specific to their location.
It has been. We've had a few clients that have come through actually where unfortunately they have worked with a previous builder and they've gone insolvent, and then they've had to draw down on that home indemnity insurance. So it's vital to have. And then we've had to go in and price the works to finish off their house because it's such a sad story whenever it comes that they're so excited to get their home and their beautiful home finished. And then, towards the end of this particular project, the builder went insolvent, unfortunately. And then it was the whole process again that they had to go through to get a builder then to actually come in and finish those works. But is there a limited amount on the home indemnity insurance, Rashida, that you're aware of?
In the
Is,
context of like
is
the
it?
work that the builder can undertake,
Yeah, no, so is in terms of, is it capped at a certain limit, how much the homeowner is particularly covered for, or is it for the full scope of
oh,
works?
that is a phenomenal question. The maximum that the insurer, in this instance specifically WA, will pay out for any claim is up to 200,000 and not more than that.
200,000. Wow. Okay.
Not more than that.
Yeah.
So again, and from an insurance perspective, it does become a little bit tricky. And also, when you have a builder, unfortunately, that's lost their license or that has liquidated their business or whatever's transpired, for the new builder to then take on the works, when we approach the insurer to seek that eligibility, particularly for somebody who's now stepping in as the second builder, if I may refer to the second builder as that, or the builder who's now going to complete the works, the insurer really does want quite a bit of information as well to support the request,
Hmm.
particularly what is still left for the project to reach full completion, for handover, for practical completion. What is the scope of works? And a lot of proof. So, for an example, a survey needs to be completed on that particular project before the new builder can then start and take over. And that can be very frustrating for the second builder,
Hmm.
on that particular project, because it is not only is it costly in terms of time and energy and effort, but it's also for them to now supply that additional supporting information in order for the insurer to be comfortable enough to provide them with the approval to then proceed. So it's
Hmm.
not so as straightforward as builder A didn't complete the job for whatever reasons. Builder B picks up the job, and it's not as straightforward. But
Hmm.
what we do is we try our very best to support that builder throughout that process, especially with the very initial engagement and listing out all the supporting documents that they would need in order
Hmm.
to to submit to the insurer. On the onset, instead of going back and forth, oh, please provide additional documents for this, please provide additional documents for that, and
Yeah.
also explaining to builder B what's the reason why the insurer is asking for for this additional supporting information. What are their concerns, and highlighting that, which makes it, as long as the builder B understands the reasoning behind it, they're a lot more forthcoming with providing that information to obviously speed up the process so they can get started.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. But as imagine what it would be like for the poor homeowners. I can't, I couldn't even think what they would be going through with all of that frustration.
No,
And Hugh,
100%.
Hugh, what about you? So I know that Rashida just mentioned then it was QB is applicable to WA and South Australia. I think that you just said, Rashida. What's the circumstances over in Victoria?
Well, you guys call it indemnity insurance. We call it domestic building insurance or home warranty insurance, depending
Yeah.
on where you are.
Yep.
So very similar sort of thing. So if a builder sort of goes insolvent or disappears, dies, whatever it may be, that sort of coverage sort of comes in. Now in Victoria, we've had obviously some pretty dire things sort of happen in the warranty insurance sort of game, and quite a number of really bad things that have sort of come up from a couple of builders really getting caught out doing the wrong thing, and some of those builders are no longer with us, which is a good thing, but everybody's copying the fallout from all of that. While there is probably $100,000 more coverage that we actually get in Victoria and New South Wales in the East Coast states. It's just one of those really challenging things that comes into it because not only have the costs of the warranty insurance gone up, but now we're also being assessed in quite a more serious manner, which
Mm,
I'm sure is going on everywhere for all insurances, where the assessments are being done in such a way that it is going to start hampering the ability of builders and homeowners to one get the insurance, but also be able to make sure that they've got coverage in the event something does actually go wrong. So
yeah.
it's navigating this space at the moment is becoming more tedious and more challenging for all involved.
Yeah. No, I think is it every 3 years or every 5 years? I feel like that we have to renew our application with them as well, with the QBE, if I'm
Mm.
correct. Yeah, just for them to be able to assess, because rightly so, they want to make sure that the builder is in a good position, that they're going to be able to carry through these projects, and there's not going to be significant claims down the line for some builders doing the wrong thing and starting works and then being unable to complete them, because as we can, we've just heard that it's such a sad story for some homeowners that have already gone through that. Just so then, beyond home warranty insurance or domestic insurance, so builders also carry a range of other insurances that protect the projects as well. Rashida, are you able to talk through some of those main insurances? I know that, like for example, public liability, etc. So can you just give us, especially for maybe people that don't understand insurance and what they're for specifically, and this adds to why sometimes whenever homeowners question overheads and things like that, the builders have to carry, it's for these purposes of insurances, what they need to be also covered for and the risks that they carry. So could you talk to us about that, Rashida, please?
Yeah, 100%. So I'll start off with the most common one that everybody is quite familiar with, which is the public and products liability insurance. This protects the builders if their work causes injury to a third party or damage to a third party's property. So, as you would know, that construction involves quite a lot of activity. If you think about it, you've got your subcontractors, you've got your clients, you've got your suppliers, and it's quite a microorganism of so many moving parts, if I can
Yeah.
call it that. So the exposure can occasionally arise where during, if I were to give you a tangible example, during an excavation works themselves, a builder might accidentally damage a neighbor's retaining wall, and if the neighbor suffers property damage and makes a claim, the public liability insurance is the one that assists with the cost of the repairs. But the one I want to emphasize on is not only with regards to the repairs does the public liability policy respond, but it's also the legal expenses. And I'd like to take a minute and just highlight how important that is, because that in itself could run into the thousands. It
Mm.
really does. So that's why when you hear public liability and you think about the liability limit, if you hear it, it says, okay, it's either 10 million or 20 million. And somebody would go, but why so high? The
Mm.
reason for that being is because the legal fees that are associated to proving the who was negligible on, for this unfortunate situation that may have occurred. And that's where the cost is actually associated. So public liability is definitely vital to have. And then also you take it a step further and you say, well, within contractual obligations, when you look at your contracts before you engage in any services, they would have stipulations in terms of what liability limit they would need you to have
Mm.
for a particular project. And the general consensus is anything, it cannot be less than, I think, 10 million at the
Yeah, 10
moment.
million, I think, is
Um,
the minimum you can
is
have.
the minimum that, yeah. So generally speaking, everybody follows the normal 20 million liability limit. And if you look at the premiums associated to the liability, that is where it carries the most premium. It's not necessarily only the contract works, it's
Mm.
actually the liability, and the rates on the liability are slightly higher. Again, due to that particular, claims associated to it, because those claims can run into the thousands.
Yeah, no, thank you. I know it increases a lot every year anyway. And then the other one that we have to carry is workers' compensation insurance. Do you have much knowledge around that one, Rashida?
Yeah, so with regards to workers' compensation insurance, it is a legislative requirement, particularly, and again, I'll focus on Western Australia. So if you have employees, apprentices, it is compulsory for you to have workers' compensation. Where it becomes a little bit interesting, and most of our conversation with our clients when it comes to workers' compensation is normally around, do I need to provide cover for my contractors or subcontractors? That's
Mm.
the biggest question we always get. And the simplest way that I can try and explain that is that if the contractors or subcontractors in which you engage who provide you with a service, say, let's for example, say you are Bob the Builder and you subcontract the plumbing work of your construction projects out to a different company, ensuring that that particular company has their own workers' compensation insurance policies where they're able to provide you with a certificate of currency proving that they have. However, in saying that, if Bob the Builder has got his own workers' compensation insurance for himself, for his employees, his apprentices, if he does engage with sole traders who cannot get workers' compensation, and that sole trader is a contractor providing a
Mm.
service, the main builder, Bob the Builder's insurance cover would need to extend to those particular contractors. So again, it's very important to ensure that when you have your discussions with your insurance broker, to be really honest and transparent with how the works are involved within your business, what work is outsourced, what work is being done by contractors, subcontractors, what component of the work do they provide? Is it labor only? Is it
Mhm.
labor and tools? Is it labor, plant, and materials? So,
Mm.
and that way the insurer then calculates the respective premiums, which directly impacts, what the overall annual premium for the policy is. So very, very important. We want to make sure everybody's covered, especially on construction sites. Things happen so quickly. And unfortunately, because the industry in itself it's not an office-based risk, so therefore it's a construction risk. An accident happen quickly. Somebody falls, from a scaffolding and injures their back, and those periods of time where they're unable to work can be quite costly, and costly to the builder as well. Because again, if there's a claim, it then carries on the builder's record for several years.
Mm. And
So
with that, just a question on that one, Rashida, actually, just from my own knowledge. Is it right in saying that if you had a sole trader to work with you and they didn't hold their own workers' compensation, if they hold their own like personal insurance, like their is that sufficient to cover, or should we still be extending that cover for workers' comp as well?
that's a phenomenal question. And yes, generally speaking, most of the time, you would find that those sole traders may have a personal accident insurance
Yeah.
policy in place. But however, the project owner and the principal then basically taken as the responsible party should that sole trader then become injured while working on your project. So that
Yeah.
is where you would technically still be held liable in
Mhm.
those specific scenarios where if that sole trader was injured. Yes. And if I can just add on to that, the other one that we also have general conversations with our working directors, especially if they tend to work. So working director, they are on site. They are, assisting, their teams. If something does happen to them, do they have adequate and sufficient cover? Should they not be able to work for a set period of time for whatever reason, due to injury? Definitely something important to consider as well to ensure their wages that they get paid.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful. And another question that came to mind as you were speaking: if someone was an owner builder, should I feel like as you've been speaking, they should be holding in a public liability insurance, and then do they have a workers' comp? Is there anything like that? Because obviously they have contractors on their sites. Can you expand on that a little bit, or?
Yeah. So we have quite a bit of homeowner builders or owner builders that come through to us seeking insurance coverage, particularly should they be undertaking some work. Most of the time, it would be your renovation projects,
Yeah.
and sometimes it's a new build. Somebody that's experienced and wants to build their own house, but they are the owner builder, so they're going to undertake most of the work and then outsource the smaller jobs to those specific contractors. We actually do have something called an owner builder insurance policy,
Okay.
which covers the contract works and the liability, which is a joint or combined policy,
Mhm.
depending on the scope of works, the project cost itself. But then we also have conversations about the workers' compensation and going, will you be undertaking in terms of the work? When will you outsource the work to those subcontractors? If the answer is yes, do those subcontractors have their own insurances in place? If the answer is no, please, you will need to have workers' compensation for those subcontractors on site.
Yeah, so it's a big task for an owner builder then if they're
It is.
when especially, the builder we've got our teams and everything to support all there's a lot of administration that goes with that as well, you know? In your experience, and what would be some of the biggest insurance mistakes that builders, that you've seen, what's the biggest mistakes builders have made, and would you have any advice on how to avoid them, Rashida?
Oh, that's a great question. From
Or homeowners as well. Is there any lessons, I suppose, that you've seen in the past that homeowners have made, or builders that maybe that you could share with us that to
well,
prevent this in the future?
absolutely. So when you do your annual insurance renewal, right? And especially when you look at your annual contract works and you're trying to forecast what your pipeline will look like in 12 months' time, and you estimate the works that you're going to be undertaking. And let's assume for a second that your business generally focuses on new builds, irrespective whether it being residential or commercial or industrial, as well as renovation projects, ensuring that the maximum contract value per project is accurate
Hmm.
in the beginning. There are nuances. For an example, if you know that the majority of the work that you're going to take is give or take 700,000, hypothetically, and you win a contract that is now worth 1.5 million, please check your insurances before you sign the contract. Tying yourself into that particular contract itself when you haven't engaged with your broker and your insurer to ensure that you are adequately covered for those specific projects. I would also say things like the construction period is very important. On average, the insurers are comfortable in providing terms where the construction period is 12 months.
Hmm.
But if you could possibly forecast or foresee that the project is not necessarily going to reach practical completion by the 24 months,
Mhm.
engage with your broker, have that conversation and go, look, there may have been delays or supply delays or, delays with contractors completing the jobs due to the workforce shortages. Have that conversation so that the insurer is well aware that there's a few projects or one or two, whatever the case may be, that may not reach practical completion at that set date of 24 months. That's very important. We see that we want to highlight that as an educational piece as well to
Mm.
make sure that the builders are adequately covered. To taking it a step further, if you look at your tools insurance, if you look at the volume of claims coming through from our builders, unfortunately experiencing the worst periods of time for theft of their tools, and if you
Mhm.
look at the downtime that they have needing to go and replace those tools and the extra cost associated to it is really sad when those come through. And you try and mitigate that as best as you can by saying, look, what tools do you have? Do you have an inventory? Does your administrative teams, have an Excel sheet with all the serial numbers of all the equipment you hold? Are they
Mhm.
insured? Have you included them? And is the value that you've depicted on those schedules per se, are they accurate to today's value?
Mhm.
It's the little things. So to take your time is the biggest recommendation I would say is take your time with the renewals. It's not just insurance for the sake of insurance. It is ultimately ensuring that you are taken care of should a claim arise.
Mm.
You want to know with absolute confidence that if an unfortunate situation arises, that when you do pick up the phone and call your broker and say, "This is just what's happened," when the broker sends you the claim form, it's you need to have some sort of form of peace of mind, knowing you are adequately covered,
Mm.
and that's the biggest thing for us.
That's very helpful because it's led into my next question, which was typically what happens when something does go wrong, and how do you sort of what's the mechanisms for that claim to start? So you've already covered it that you have to call your broker, then you get
Yeah,
sent the claim form. But if you have that, suppose just in tools alone, if you have all of that information on your serial numbers and all of the maybe pictures and things like that, that would be super helpful. But is there anything else that we need to be aware of if a claim needs to be made, Rashida?
absolutely. So again, just to the point you've made, so when you contact your broker, the broker would most likely be sending you a claim form, depending on what the claim is. Let's assume it's a claim due to theft of materials on the construction site. The insurer would generally want to know what were the security measures that were in place before the
Mhm.
time. Have you reported this incident to the police? What is that case number? And taking as many photographs as you possibly can to support the case
Mhm.
for when you do lodge that claim. That the insurer's got everything that they need to make an informed decision and as quickly as possible to get you back on track.
Yeah.
That's important.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you for that. And is there any other things that builders could do to better protect themselves and the homeowners through their documentation and good processes, apart from what you've already suggested? Anything else that you can think of?
Don't underinsure. The insurers know and have mechanisms in place to calculate what the project value could have been, what the supply materials are in today's time, if I can call it that. Do not
Yeah.
underinsure. It doesn't work out beneficial to either the builder or the homeowner. And then just I think the last thing from my end is just when the right protections are in place and the responsibilities are clearly understood from the builder, from the homeowner, it gives everyone involved greater confidence throughout the build. Just setting the expectations clearly from the onset. It just allows for much seamless job at the end of the day, or project or end result, if you want to call it that. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, that's super helpful. Thank you so much, Rashida. Hugh, have you got any questions for Rashida or anything to extend on what might happen over your side of the country?
Yeah, well, I've been taking some notes while sort of sitting here at the moment, and I think you've covered off a couple of things. But I think that there's probably one thing because we are seeing so many changes, and like sort of touching on stuff we spoke about earlier about QBE and that sort of thing in Victoria with the changes that have sort of happened. I think QBE might actually have been forced out of the market in Victoria. Now it's being handled by the Victorian government, which is a worry for all of us anyway when it comes to the Victorian government and some of the things that they do. But we won't get into that. The
I was just going to
um,
say, Hugh, I wasn't prepared for that.
no, don't worry. I'm not gonna touch on any of that sort of thing. It's probably probably crossing the lines of like getting into politics, and well, I don't like to talk about politics very much. It's one of those things where, because we do have the changes that are happening with the legislation and with the requirements that we're sort of facing, with applications and letters of eligibility, and what our eligibility sort of standards are when it comes to the indemnity slash warranty insurance. With those capacity changes, are you guys sort of seeing what those capacity changes are and how they're actually affecting and limiting a lot of the capacity for the work that builders can actually comfortably do
Undertake.
and undertake? That's right. And so we're seeing guys that have had a capacity of, say, $5 or $10 million worth of work at any one time being able to be completed and undertaken, and they're starting to get to the point with the new eligibility where that's being drawn back, and they're actually getting a lower capacity, a lower amount that they can
Mhm.
actually undertake. Are we seeing that sort of thing happening? And then what are the effects to homeowners? Then they can't get a builder to do the work on their home.
Yeah, so that's a phenomenal question actually, and we get that often. We really do. Again, because there is only one insurer, particularly in Western Australia, that being QBE, the insurers are becoming very stringent with regards to their approvals. We are also seeing quite a bit of our builders requesting for a higher limit on their eligibility or indemnity insurance. In order to support that particular request, the insurer does require quite a bit of supporting information because they don't necessarily just increase it because you've asked. What we have done, which is slightly different and moving forward, which we will definitely build on, is in creating, and again, the educational piece to the builders saying, this is currently what you have in terms of your eligibility limit. This is what the government technically allows you to build. If you do require a limit increase, these are the supporting information that the insurer will ask. We're also jumping ahead of the curve by, Louise mentioned earlier that you have your review period, and that is purely dependent on the size of business that you have. And that the review period could be annually, it could be once in 2 years. But what we have found is when we are engaging with the insurer way before the review period, it also allows the builder enough time to collect all the supporting information to get their net asset position in a better situation that by the time the submission is sent through to the insurer, it's a lot better. We are also now changing the conversation in terms of not just blindly sending an application to the insurer to review, but actually creating a narrative and a story behind it, creating an understanding for the insurer to get the fact that this is somebody's business, this is somebody's livelihood, this is somebody who does something the right way. So reward the builders who are doing things for the right reasons in the right way, and you support the financials to support that particular request. So creating a persona, if I can call it that, before we submit the application to the insurer. It's not just a tick box exercise. And actually having real conversations and going, all right, so if the builder is at this position on this particular category, this is the cost for their eligibility or their job specific certificates, etc., etc. How do we get them onto a better rate? What do they need to provide back to us so that we can support the requirements? And I will say it's not always possible that the insurer is willing to increase that limit because again the exposure is quite high, and again it's the nuance of unfortunately a lot of bad things that have happened in the past across the industry is now taints the rest of the builders who supply or submit their applications. But it's up to us as the brokers to change that narrative, especially for the guys who are doing the right thing for the right reasons with the right integrity. That's ultimately what we try and do, and have those educational seminars, which I'm more than happy to share with you after this particular session as well, Louise and Hugh, so that you are able to distribute this to your students and to your audience as well. And we even got it down right down to the basics of, okay, how do you increase your application limit? What information would the insurer really want to see for them to make an informed decision? And that is great, and certainly a useful tool, and definitely something that we build on, especially with the conversations that we have with our builders on a daily basis, because that is the most common request. We call it the backbone of insurance, because without the indemnity, you can't do anything else. There's no point in even having the contract works or the workers' comp or the liability without the indemnity insurance.
Yeah.
place.
So there would be no builders then if you didn't have that,
Correct. Correct.
So no, that's super helpful, Rashida. Thank you. Um, but yeah, Rashida, is there anything else that you think would be useful to share? I think that this is an awesome conversation. I think just to really help listeners give a little bit more, give them a little bit more understanding of what the insurance is about with builders, and also for builders as well if they're listening, or any trades, to make sure that they're doing the right thing and doing their check boxes, and just looking at their own processes to see where these things need to fall in place. Do conversations need to be had earlier? Do they have like checklists for whenever certain things happen in their projects? So yeah, so from our point of view, this has been super helpful. But is there anything else that you'd like to share now with any of the builders or homeowners that are listening that you think that would be beneficial?
Absolutely. Insurance in this day and age is not a one size fits all. We, as master builders, we look at your unique scenarios. We look at your business, what's important to you, how best we can mitigate your risks as best as possible, well, how we can highlight certain exclusions and make sure you are adequately, or not adequately covered, more than adequately covered. And having honest conversations is, I think, what's really vital is talk to your broker. What are your concerns? What keeps you up at night? What are the things that you go, have I thought of this and have I thought of that? Really good, meaty questions. It's not just insurance for the sake of, yes, I've got insurance, but what does it actually provide coverage for? And how do I ensure that I'm more than sufficiently covered if anything happens? Because to us as master builders, we look after our builders and their communities because that's what feeds us. That's how I look at it. So we don't treat any inquiry that comes through as a one size fits all. It's a tick box exercise. Okay, just fill out the forms kind of things. We actually want to have really meaningful conversations and go, what is your concerns? What work are you undertaking? What is it about your business that is different to the next business? So we want to make sure there's uniqueness in what it is that we provide. And again, being in touch with all the insurers specializing in construction is really useful, purely because obviously in terms of the rates that we offer, the coverage that we're able to provide is very important. So we're constantly reviewing the changes to policy wordings as well. So I think the biggest thing for me is we don't treat anybody that comes through our door as just another builder. We know our builders really well. We really do. We love to sit down and have conversations with our builders. Sometimes it's not always possible in person, but we have Teams meetings as well for our regional builders. We focus on, their locations as well, in terms of what are the highest risks based on the location in which they operate, because it's not always the same. A builder in the metro area, the risks are slightly different to a guy who's more regional, and hone into what is most important to their business as well.
Oh, awesome. No, that's awesome to finish up, Rashida. But listen, thank you so much. I am very grateful for you coming on our podcast today and being our guest speaker. I think that the knowledge that you've shared is really invaluable. And Hugh, do you have anything to add before we finish up?
No. Thank you so much, Rashida. It's been great to be able to sort of pose a couple of challenging questions without going into politics. And it's been great to get the wisdom and the invaluable information sort of being able to be shared across here. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to Builders Beyond Borders. If today's episode helped you feel more prepared, clearer, or more confident, share it with a mate who's planning their own build or reno. Got a question about building, renovating, or working with tradies? Send it our way. We might cover it in a future episode. And don't forget to hit follow or subscribe so you never miss the real stories, practical tips, and builder insights we've got coming your way. Everything shared on this podcast is based on our experiences and those of our guests. It's general info only. Any reliance on the information provided is done at your own risk.